Oscar here from RealPeel Studios. Make sure to like and share this episode. Hope you enjoy.
Coming up on today's show, we look at how there could almost be a fishing war emerging in the channel, how there's a COVID crisis emerging in India, and how the football results of the week went, plus much more. So make sure you stay tuned to the end to listen to all our stories. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome to the 5th instalment of RealPeel Reports, our brand new podcast giving you a roundup of the week's news events. Anyway, enough the formalities, let's get into the show. And our first story today is about the elections. Now these elections are all over the UK and you'll have probably heard of them, whether it's from the news, whether it's from YouTube, because there's a lot of YouTubers taking part in this, whether it's from any sort of social media. But why is this all over the news? Why is this important? Well, me and Oscar are going to explain that to you. Now, there are three main elections, shall we say, going on. The London, Scotland and Welsh ones. In particular, the two of the latter that I've just said. The Scottish and the Welsh ones. Now, they're really important because it's basically like how we elect our members of parliament, like how we elected Boris Johnson last time to be in power. I think we just leave that in, to be honest.
Yeah,
I just chewing my throat doing that. But with these Scottish and the Welsh ones and everything, what happens is these people have powers to sort of control how the country goes and different things. So like they have powers over education, over the NHS and all sorts of things like that. So for example, in COVID, you may have heard that like how Scotland and Wales had different lengths of lockdown, went in at different points, went out at different points, had different restrictions, and that was sort of tapered to how the country was doing. So it's called devolved power, because that basically means they have power, just not as much as the UK government. So the UK government still controls them, but they have their own power to do certain things, like education as well. So like back in COVID, what Scotland did was they decided that they were not going to do exams before the British government did that. The British government only really did that was because they were getting called out by the media and all the other countries in the UK did it. And Boris is a bit of a wuss. Swiftly moving on. But that genuinely is it though. So they're quite important because for Scotland and Wales, it's kind of deciding how the country's run. So that's about decisions for the NHS, things like COVID, like when national emergencies come along, when you've got education systems that need to be decided. Like Scotland runs its things in different ways, and so does Wales. Like, because I suppose each country is different, so it needs to run individual things slightly differently. Like in COVID, UK would have been at like 1,500 deaths a day, whereas Scotland at some point could have been at like 300 deaths in a day, if you know what I mean. So they need to do different things accordingly. So that's why it's kind of such an important election, because for Scotland and Wales, it's like the main UK election and they're huge because that decides how our country's run. But yeah. Now the other story you will have heard me talk about at the beginning was the London election. Well, I say London election, sort of deciding who their mayor is. That is quite important because they do get to decide a lot of how London's run. And as you'll know, that's home to about 11 million people, I think it is now. So I mean,
Jeez. Something
for like, if York was having an election, like where we live, it's nothing. It is 150,000 people, like, doesn't really matter. But for 11 million people, it's not as much power as the government. They've still got power, if you get what I mean. So it's quite a big one. But there's obviously been it's been a lot of more fun this year, hasn't it? Really, the election, hasn't it? Because I mean, we've had Nico and Max Bosch campaigning for it. I think at one point Nico was 5% in the polls, which is it's insane. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Although I think currently he's on about 3%. And he's being beaten by Lawrence Fox. However, that's not particularly representative of how the whole election's going to go, right? Because I think the areas they've got the information from, right, so far, are quite right-leaning, shall we say. So, like, Sean Bailey, who is expected to get smashed, who's the Tory, right?
Right.
He's expected to be blown out the water again by Sadiq Khan. But he's like 2% behind Sadiq Khan at the moment, right? So he's doing really well. And Lawrence Fox is on about 5%, and he's only going to probably get about 1% in total, because the votes they've counted so far have actually been from a lot of the particularly right-leaning areas. But still,
Right.
out of there, Nico's still on about 3% out of that lot, which is pretty insane, isn't it?
The funniest part of the whole thing is that Nico's whole like his main like campaign is just changing the price of the Freddo. So funny.
To 5p. Oh,
yeah.
Freddos are so expensive though.
Yeah,
Like,
innit? Yeah,
seriously,
to be
for a
fair,
tiny bit.
He's got a fair point.
Yeah, he's got a good point. I think I'd quite like to be Prime Minister, I reckon. And we can just
Yeah.
like change the price of all chocolates, if you know what I mean.
Innit?
Oh,
There
but
was
it's
like an ITV.
You think
There's
about
like
it
an ITV
though.
interview. Yeah, you go.
Think about it. You've got those 4 packs of like crunchies you get on offer at the co-op for like £1, yeah? Or at the shop local.
Yeah.
Now that's good value. They're decent chocolate bars. And then you've got tiny, flat, small Freddos for 25p, where if you buy 4, it's worth £1. Like, geez, they do need to cut the price down to at least
Exactly.
15p, I say.
Yeah. It was funny though. There's an ITV interview which is like, express why you want to be the London Mayor. Sorry, in 2 words. And Nico's was just for vibes. It's so funny. I was crying with laughter at that one.
Did you see where he told Boris Johnson to shush on national TV?
Yes. Yeah, I saw that. It's
To be
so
honest,
funny.
some of his points though are actually. They're actually
Yeah.
not bad, to be honest.
Yeah,
when
like,
he takes
they
it,
weren't-
when he says
yeah.
serious points, they're not bad points. Like,
Definitely.
he's actually got some pretty decent points about how young people actually need to be heard and everything. But it's
Yeah.
quite funny because of how when this YouTube kid, right, is getting like 5% of the vote on polls, yeah. What's
Right.
happening is the media and like a lot of the Conservatives and Labour and all the other parties are thinking, that maybe people like Nico and maybe the youth actually do have power, if you know what I mean. So I
Right,
think
yeah,
they've
no, I know what you
actually
mean.
ended up spending a bit of money on campaigning to them. But should we
Yeah.
move on to the next story?
Yes. So, recently, Courtney Cox was on an interview with Ellen DeGeneres, and it's really exciting. The Friends reunion is coming very soon. Just a quick, background info. So it'll be on HBO Max, which is annoying because it's another subscription that we have to sign up to, which is like the 10th TV thing we have to sign up
Oh
to.
yeah,
That's fine
it's
though.
silly. There's so many now, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. And the whole selling point is that it's got like so many programs you can watch everything all in one show. Yeah.
Yeah, but how much stuff do they think we can actually watch? It's flipping BritBox, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus,
Yeah.
HBO. You've got the DAZN Sports ones. You've got Sky Sports. You've got Now TV.
Ridiculous.
You've got so many more as well that I can't even be bothered to name, like BT and Eurosport.
Yeah.
Everything. It's just, if you know what I mean.
It's too overboard, I reckon. Anyway, yeah. So the Friend reunion is coming very soon. It's all going to be they're all going to be like not in character. It won't be like an actual episode. Although apparently, according to David Schwimmer on the Graham Norton show, there will be something like I think they're going to read something. So that's quite exciting. It's been 17 years. Can you believe it? 17 years since the last episode of Friends.
Yeah, I know, and kids still watch it and buy all the merch.
Yeah, exactly.
Still
I've
love
actually got a
it.
T-shirt. It's a great T-shirt that my uncle gave me.
It's kind of crazy to see that something 17 years old is kind of still got a legacy.
Yeah. The thing is,
But the only thing that really springs to mind for that,
yeah.
I suppose something like South Park, which, I love it, it is so good. But I suppose they do keep still making episodes, but South Park, though, if you haven't watched it, actually watch it, it's so good.
Is it?
It's so good.
Oh, that's
If you
cool.
not watched it,
I've not watched it though.
oh, make sure, mate, you'd actually love it, it's just funny.
Okay,
Like, it's
I'll do
genuinely
that.
just funny.
So the other news show that I've got for you today is that The Circle, one of Channel 4's TV shows, is amazing. It's really good. It's been cancelled, so they're not going to make any more seasons after season 3, which has just been aired. They said Channel 4 has confirmed that it will not renew The Circle for a 4th series. The hit reality series began in 2018 and recently wrapped up its 3rd series. Blah 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 blah. And so yeah, basically they're saying that they're really happy with how it's turned out, and they said they're really incredibly proud to give like such an innovative show and to give it like a springboard for its international format success.
Yeah, but
And so
people always say that when they end shows, don't they? They go, "Oh, wasn't it so
yeah.
good? Oh, wasn't it amazing?" Well, clearly you didn't think it was because you're not continuing it. So
Yeah, but to be
if
fair,
you
though,
thought it
there
was
is-
that good, then you continue
Yeah.
making it.
There is actually a US version called, actually I think it's just called The Circle. It's on Netflix, so at least that's on. But there you go. It's quite
Yeah.
sad. It's going to be.
I guess we'll
ending.
just have to use, those VPNs where you can change country and stuff.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you just have to use one of them to watch it now.
What was it called? Like that VP was it Shark VPN or something? The
Yeah.
stupid adverts that always like sponsors the YouTubers.
But if they are listening and they want to sponsor us, then
Yeah, no.
oh
Yeah,
baby,
give us money,
we'd
please.
be loving
We
that.
want money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We think if there's any money involved, we'll say Shark VPN is the best or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And like it's way better than Turtle VPN and that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Turtle VPN. There you go. That's all my news stories for you there.
Ah, nice. Now we're going to move on to the sports report, and as you'll know if you listened to last week's episode, it is our new format and new segment to the show, and we've got some pretty good games to round up this week, and the main ones being the Champions League games. So, as you'll have known if you're interested in football, Man City have a bit of a curse where they just can't get to a Champions League final and they just don't do well in it, and VAR normally always stiffs them up as well. But this year they've actually, on Tuesday night I think it was, they beat Paris Saint-Germain 2-0 to win the game on aggregate 4-1, and that sent them through to the Champions League final where they will be playing Chelsea. And Chelsea actually had a pretty good run in the sorry, can I just forget that just wasn't flowing.
Sure.
Now we're going to move on to the sports report of the week. And as you'll know if you listened to last week's episode, it's our new segment for the show. Now we're going to move on to our new segment to the show, RealPeel Sports Report. Again, a very original name. But in this week's sports, there's been quite a few stories to be honest. The main ones being Champions League semi-finals, as well as the Europa League ones. And in the Champions League semi-finals, Man City managed to lift their curse of never being able to get to a Champions League final or do well, with actually some help from VAR for once, because normally they get stiffed by VAR, but this year Man City actually got help by VAR when Fionn Kuiper, the referee, awarded a penalty for when Zinchenko hit the ball with his shoulder, and everyone claimed it was a handball from PSG, but VAR overturned it because it actually hit his shoulder. So, instead of them being stiffed by VAR, for once it's actually helped them. But they'll be facing Chelsea in the Champions League final for an all-English clash, which is going to be quite an exciting prospect, because Chelsea managed to win their second leg 2-0, meaning that they won 3-1 on aggregate. Oh, and by the way, Man City won 4-1 on aggregate with a 2-0 win in the last leg. Man City won 2-0 on the night, which helped them win 4-1 in aggregate, which is a pretty decent result against one of the teams that is claimed to be the best in the world, and has spent 350 million plus on just 2 players, which is a mental amount. Now, did you know, because there's the 2 English teams in the final, right?
Yeah.
It's predominantly going to be British fans going to watch the final of the Champions League, yeah?
Right, yeah.
But no, that can't happen, because Turkey has been put on the red list by the government, which is like countries you can't really go to, or I think you have to quarantine to or something.
Yeah.
Because of COVID, right?
That's a good point, yeah.
Turkey's been put on the red list, so a load less fans will probably go, and it'll probably just be a load of Turkish people. So that's quite an interesting little story about the Champions League. Because what's been happening, right, is instead of like people in India and Pakistan, right, they're in like high risk countries, like the government make them self-isolate. So when they come back, they'd have to isolate and pay £1,700 to isolate in a hotel, and they'd have to pay that. But what they ended up doing is, what they do is they fly over to Turkey, stay in Turkey for 10 days in like a 4 or 5 star hotel for like 300 quid, which is way cheaper but way nicer, and have a flipping holiday over there, and then come back to the UK, but technically they've isolated there, which is what you have to do when you're going into that country. And then technically they've come into the country legally and everything. I mean, it is pretty funny to be honest, but yeah. But anyway, we're going to move on to rugby, and actually it's about the British and Irish Lions, to be honest. And I don't think Oscar is either, but I don't think we're both either particularly rugby fans. But
Yep.
There seems to be an absolutely massive deal in the rugby world, so we thought we'd cover it. But the 37-man squad, I think it is, has been announced.
Yeah, I think it's 36. I think.
Right. I swear it was 37, but whatever.
I'll look it up.
36 sounds better. But the British and Irish Lions team has been announced, and the captain's going to be a guy called Alan Wynne-Jones. So if you're into your rugby, you'll have to comment you'll have to put in the comments whether you agree with him being captain, whether you agree with the teams, because we're not really people to comment, like, we don't have much of an idea about it, but
No.
just put in the comments what you actually think, because that'd be pretty cool, get a little discussion flowing, if you know what I mean. Because it's kind of like, I get with the England Euros, because me and my mates, we want certain players to be in and certain players not to be, and we're already arguing over it so much. So I assume it's probably like that with rugby, so argue out in the comments if you want. But anyway, we're going to move back onto the normal news off our sports, and we're going to be talking about a fishing row. And to be honest, it's not the most exciting sounding thing. But with Brexit, where we left the EU, part of the deal was, part of the way we sold it was we sold to British fishermen, we'll reclaim the waters, you can have your waters back. But actually it's meant that a lot of French fishermen aren't being able to make any money really, and are actually going quite poor, right? So what's ended up happening with them is they've staged like a little protest on their boats, right? So then the UK has launched 2 of its full-on navy boats towards a couple of fishermen, having a bit of a protest, yeah?
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, but I think that's a bit of an overreaction, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like in English, yeah? We were looking at MLE, right, and texting and stuff like that.
Yeah, yes we were,
and text language. And one article was saying it's fine, and then another one was like, it's savaging sentences, destroying something else, and raping vocabulary.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I think that was a bit extreme, and to be honest, I think that's like sending a navy boat out is pretty much like that, if you know what I mean. Like, it's just way over the top.
Yeah, good analogy that.
Yeah. It's not even like the British fishermen are benefiting. The French are missing out because they're not able to catch as many fish, right? And they're going poor.
Right.
But the British, when they catch their fish, because of the amount of time it takes to do paperwork and the cost of transporting and the time it takes now for all the checks, they're losing about 70% of the amount of money they used to make, if not more. And I think a lot of them are just purely losing money at the moment now. That's how bad a scene it's got. And it's been like that for the past few months.
Right.
Because think you've got seafood, yeah, and you can't really sell to Europe because a lot of your produce, yeah, it costs so much to send over there now because of Brexit checks, and then the paperwork takes ages to do. It's just been an absolute joke. Like this guy in Bridlington, yeah, he's had a fishing business for 80 years, I think, family run, making dosh, and I mean dosh, yeah, shut down with COVID because he was like. Not with COVID, with Brexit. He was like, the way it was going, he was like, I'm never going to be able to pay my staff what they signed up for. Because on the contracts, yeah, in doing it, he'll have agreed to pay like money towards pensions and all sorts of stuff like that. And money to pay and to lay them off. And that's just what you have to do really as a business legally, yeah. And he was like, we've been making profit for all these years, but we're not. And we're losing so much money. I'm never going to be able to pay these people off if I don't just shut the business down right now. So he ended up shutting his massive family business down just to be able to pay his workers off properly, which I respect him, but like he should never have to do that, and that's all, and I mean all because of Brexit, which is just a joke. And there's so many stories up and down the country like that, like such a tragedy what's happened with it. Anyway, from one tragedy to another, we're going to be talking about India's COVID crisis. Now you may have heard this in the news, and I mean it's really sad. What's happened is, literally, they're running out of ventilators, but not just ventilators, they're running out of the oxygen to put in them. So, like, people in hospital, yeah, getting treatment, and some parts of Delhi won't share their oxygen with other parts of Delhi, and it's almost become competitive over oxygen, right? And there's like 40 or 50 people died a couple of weeks ago just from not being able to have oxygen because people wouldn't share and because there wasn't enough. And it's an absolute catastrophe, like, there's thousands and thousands dying each day.
Jesus.
I mean, it's just really sad.
That's awful.
Yeah. I mean, it's a similar situation than like what we were in a few months ago. However, I suppose we are a much smaller country, so theirs is sort of magnified, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But still,
right.
I don't even think their death rate is as bad as ours. Because they have such a high population. I think their percentage of people dead and in hospital from COVID is less than ours was at the peak. That shows how bad
Right.
England was. So imagine if Boris was running India. Think how bad that'd be then. Especially with the fact India
Jesus.
have so much less money and so much less resources to be able to do things like that. Think how much of a mess that country would be with him. Right, talking about COVID, we're going to move on to the last story of the week, and that's just a little COVID roundup, because me and Oscar were chatting about it, discussing. I thought, you know, it'd be quite nice just to do a little COVID roundup so you could sort of get an idea of where we're doing with COVID. So,
Yeah,
in the last
definitely.
24 hours, there's been 2,613 new recorded cases of COVID. But you've got to think about it. At some points, there were quite a lot, very little, if not very little amount of tests being done. But now, with all the school kids doing it, and then you just being able to walk into a pharmacy and get one, yeah? There's a lot more tests going on. So they're able to pick up a lot more COVID rates, but still, COVID rates are down so low, which is really good.
Right, that's good. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. In the last 24-hour period, there's been 13 deaths, which is still sad, but at the peak, I think we were racking up about 1,700 deaths. It's just mental.
Jeez.
I mean, other countries our size were racking up like a couple of hundred in their peak, but I mean, we've got Boris as leader, so just imagine what happens. In the last 7 days, it's been an average of 12 people dying, so it's slightly up on the average, but to be honest, it's just going to be variety just any day, really. That's just natural.
Right.
In the last 7 days as well, it's been an average of 2,044 new cases, which means
Really?
we're about 550, 560 cases up today. But you've got to bear in mind it's kind of a Friday, so a lot of paperwork still gets done, whereas unlike your Saturday, Sunday and Monday, a lot of people in the NHS are resting and stuff like that, right? A lot of the cases don't get
fair
recorded.
enough.
So I feel like you need to look more at the average for it. So that's nothing to worry about, and plus that's way lower than in the peak. But we're going to end the episode with some pretty good news, actually. And that's
Lovely.
about vaccinations. So, for people having their first dose of vaccine, it's reached 34,934,171. And of those that have
Jeez.
received their first dose, yeah, over 16 million even, 291,719 people have got their second dose as well. So I mean, it's loads of people with seconds, most people with firsts. I mean, it's reached a point now where it's pretty safe because of COVID and everything. But to be honest,
Right.
I think there was rumour, because of how low the rate's going and because everyone's vaccinated, that Boris Johnson in June is going to try drop the 1 metre social distancing rule. But I don't know if people will ever feel...
Finally.
Yeah, why? Because watch what'll happen. You'll get a new variant, it'll spring along without them detecting it for a few months, and then it'll go around spreading. Just that's what'll happen.
God.
Mark my words. But we'll just look at the current situation where it's doing all right. But yeah, I don't know if people still will do it though if it's legally allowed. If you know what I mean, because people are still quite scared of it and everything. If you get what I mean,
Right. Yeah.
and it's gonna feel sort of quite socially weird to be next to people again, and also people aren't going to be wearing masks and stuff like that, I think. So imagine that,
Yeah, and stuff like in classrooms, how they rearrange all the tables. Are they going to put them back? What's going to happen about
I
that?
know.
So,
Oh yeah, because in classrooms they've all rearranged our tables and made them further
Yeah.
away from the teachers. So then there's 30 kids right next to each other, and then one teacher on their own, because clearly we can't have 30 kids spaced out and one teacher slightly nearer the kids. But yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. All right.
that's pretty much all we
Let's
got
wrap this
time
up.
for. So, hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow us everywhere, because that support, honestly, for such a small thing, helps so much. Thank you for listening through the whole episode. That really helps the algorithm. And we got a good idea, you know. We're thinking secret comment. So what we want you to comment is potato. See how many potatoes we can get in the comments, then see how many of you have watched all the way through. Anyway, so we got time for...
There you go.
Cue the outro music.